Awesome. Okay. So today is Monday, February 5th, More Money Monday. We're talking about California Dream for All program, and our lending partner, Brad Turpin, is on with us, as he always is, to share with us the Dream for All program that will launch in April. But as he was saying, we can get started now, and I highly recommend you start now because I think it's sold out, if you want to call it that, in about 2 days.
Yep.
On. So I'm going to let him share, and let me give you the screen share capability too, Brad.
Oh, great.
All right, you're all set. So I appreciate you coming on and helping us out with that.
Definitely. Good morning, everybody. So I'm pulling up some stuff here. I just wanted to outline. So CalHFA is state-funded down payment assistance, which is great. It's one of the many. There's different, just so everybody has a little background on any of these down payment assistance. You can have city-run, county-run, state-run, and then even federal. And so this particular one is state-run. And they do their yearly allocation for budgeting, and then in that budget, so what they used to do on the regular, which they still have, which then doesn't run out of funding as quickly, and that's mainly because you can have down payment assistance in the sense of 3%, and then finance or cover assistance for your closing costs as well. And so the beauty of it is for anybody that is looking to get into home ownership, doesn't have any money to do so. And with that, they can then get their foot in the door in home ownership. The difference here is this is the CalHFA or California Dream program. And this particular one will offer up to 20% down payment. So essentially, then those borrowers are qualifying on a much lower housing payment, as well as no mortgage insurance. And that's what makes this particular program so attractive. And so, what's that?
I don't know what that was. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And it will open it up for questions as well, but basically just want to get through this baseline of kind of showing you guys, what's going on and how you can, start talking to your clients and so forth accordingly. So the with that 20% down, there's a couple of pieces of criteria. And in that criteria, the first and foremost is, which I'll share so you guys can see what this looks like here. Give me 1 second. Screen 2. Okay. So this particular screen, this is Fannie's lookup tool for median income. And so within this program, they will always look at median income for the areas. So I did this one in Sacramento, just kind of give a baseline of where everybody's at. It's kind of centralized to you guys. And so what they're going to be looking at is they're going to be looking at the difference between 80% and 120%. So if you notice in the middle box here, area median income is set at 113,900, and then your low income will be anybody below 91,000. This is for the whole household. So this isn't ever going to be per person. This is what the whole household will generate. So even if it's children that are of working age, call it 20 years old, being a dependent, they're now a full-time student, they will look at their ability to contribute to the household, even if they're not on the loan. So we always have to keep that in mind. But when we go 120%, that means this will max out at about 135,000, which is doable for the area. And that's something to be, conscientious about, because a lot of times you get into some areas and the household income, although it's too low for qualifying on, or it's well enough for the qualifying on the down payment assistance, it'll become too low for qualifying in the area because housing prices are just too high. And so therefore we always have to be careful and conscientious of that, right? And so when we're dealing with these things, outside of that, there's some other factors that come into play. One is FICO score. So any of these down payment assistance, they're going to be looking for roughly about a minimum score of 660. Some will go down to 640, but in this particular case, this one will be a 660 minimum score. and they will have to qualify and show ability to repay that debt. And they will have to be first-time home buyer. And what designates a first-time home buyer for the sake of this program is 3 years of no interest in a home. And so they determine that through 3 years tax returns. And as long as they don't have any mortgage interest used or shown on those tax returns, then they will qualify. And they have to be a California resident as well. So, and this is purely for California properties. I do always like to reiterate that, just because sometimes people do think outside the box, but this is purely a CalHFA program, which then means California residents, California properties. Outside of that, the qualifying is pretty standard. The only caveat to this is that this program uses a conventional loan versus an FHA, where a lot of them will use an FHA. And that being said, the conventional financing is always going to be more conservative than a regular FHA. So that always plays a little bit of a contributing factor for, making sure that they qualify. But the overall premise is once they qualify, they will get that 20% down. That'll go towards their down payment. They will be on the hook for their closing costs in this particular program, but we can negotiate that a couple ways. One, they're not coming in with a down payment, so they might have some money saved up. Two, we can always ask for the seller of the home to contribute concessions and pay a portion or all of their closing costs. And they also possibly could get gifted if they have any family members or anybody available. And sometimes we can even use employers gifting. It just depends on what the criteria is and what that looks like. And then once they're in the home, right, the payment will take over. They will, I'm going to stop this share and then I'll show you guys another one. They will then only make mortgage payments based on the 80% loan. And then the 20% will be forgiven in a sense that they aren't making payments on it, but it's not forgiven in its entirety as far as the loan. What will happen is, and this is what I'm going to show you guys next, is they will fall into a equity share position. So now you should see this new slide here, moderate income. Is that, everybody got that? Okay. And so this is kind of calculating on that 80 to 120% median income that I showed you earlier. And this is kind of a quick draft of how they repay, because this is usually the number one question, because everybody loves the free money, but nothing's free and there is a repayment later. So in this particular case or scenario, they're buying a home for $500,000 and later 5 years, the home's worth $640,000. So then the appreciation is the delta of the $140,000. Now, mind you, they did the first mortgage at $400,000. That's the 80%. And so their down payment assistance is the $100,000. And that will be recorded as a second lien, just so everybody's aware. It is silent in the sense that there's no payments made during that time for 5 years. So imagine just the interest, if they were making payments, what that would look like in their payment for over those 5 years. So it really gives people the opportunity to either, live a very comfortable spot in their home, or actually it gives them the opportunity to continue saving and possibly then when they sell this home, then use that money to buy another one. It really helps to get their foot ahead of the other when it comes to home ownership and building an estate. But in that $140,000, the state will then take back the $100,000. But then you have, or I'm sorry, 100,000 plus the share of the appreciation, so 28,000. And so, the homeowner then essentially gets to keep the other 112 here. So it is banking on the fact that California homes are going to continue to rise in value. It's just a matter of for them to understand what they're getting into. And then this particular scenario here is that when you sell the home, assuming that they paid down that $400,000 loan, so then they're probably going to be around 370. They pay back the loan, the original 100 plus the 28, and they then collect the homeowner equity out of it, and then they can move on to the next home. So there's really no compounding of interest or anything of that nature, which is what happens typically with the other CalHFA programs. They will just go on silently. There's no equity share, but they do get repaid when they are sold or refinanced out. And those typically carry simple interest at 3%, but they do compound. So if they didn't make those payments for 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, whatever that number is, those loans get paid back with that compounding interest. That's the only downside to, this type of regular down payment assistance program. But you can always make payments to it. And this is true on this one too. They can make payments to it, although there's no reason to, because it is purely based on the future equity. Now on this, there is one other option here. So let me stop this screen share for a sec. And let me pull up one more, because then there is, for those that are falling under the 80%, which if we looked at that, that'd be about $91,000. Those people will have a different, sharing. No, I want that one. And so this particular one, now everybody can see it's 80% AMI or under, and then it will essentially become a lesser share. So they operate under in a 15% appreciation share versus the 20%. So it does reduce the amount of money that they repay. So the state's really trying to help those that are less fortunate. And that's really what this program is designed for. It's really to help people get their foot in the door and have the ownership of a home for their family. So with all of that, there really isn't anything else as far as caveats or anything of that nature, but it's helpful for you guys to understand a little bit about this. And, what I do then from here is, really we can get one-on-one, go into a little bit more about how you can have discussion, or we can even do, conference calls with the buyers just to at least discuss what happens. So, but to Krista's point earlier, this particular program runs out of money really quick, and that's largely in part because of the 20% down component. It magnifies that liquidation of those funds pretty quick. So that's why we're starting to get the pre-quals done now and get everybody ready. And then it will be for an April launch day. I think it's April 12th, but I'll confirm that. And then essentially, if we locate a property prior to that, then the sellers have to be willing to operate and wait until they open up the funding. So the pre-qualification is really just to kind of get them in, get a reservation in, so that it will be tied to that borrower. And then once they locate a property, then that reservation gets enacted. If they don't locate a property, and then those reservations will just become first come, first serve. And that's where, the money will liquidate, and sometimes people just don't get action. So it really just depends on timing, unfortunately. And last year they were doing lottery. This year they're allowing the pre-qualifications to come in ahead of time, so that way the reservation can be set up. But if property is not identified, then it just goes to the next reservation. And so that's essentially how it's going to play out this go around. So with that, I know there's always lots of questions. So let's open it up to questions.
Brad, I wanted to look at a couple things on the slide where it said 5 years.
Yeah.
So do they wait 5 years and look at the appreciation? Like, how do they determine when they're going to collect their fee? I guess that was where I missed a step.
The 5 years was just a scenario. The fee will come in. They're going to take 20% of whatever that appreciation is. So if the appreciation was less, they're just going to take 20% of it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, there a time period you have to sit in it? Because I think the last Dream for All, you had to hold the property for a certain amount of time.
3 years is what they want to have the reduced appreciation share. It's 3 years. If it's less than 3 years, then there is a higher premium to that. And I forget how much it is. I'll have to go back and look into that part of it. But most of the time when you're, these first time home buyers, they're not buying a home to bounce out of it in 3 years. So that usually isn't of concern, although there are things that happen, life-changing circumstances that can cause that.
that's what I'm getting at because, in California, we get a lot of people that are in these industries that have some turnover. And sometimes you don't know what's coming down the pipeline. So, I kind of wanted to address what the minimum time frame was. And yeah, I mean, sometimes people want to maybe expand the family or, bring mom and dad or whatever it is where their circumstances might change. And, what is the limitation there as to when they can be out of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll see if I can locate that while we're um, talking.
Okay. And then refinance, same deal. You have to wait 3 years before you could refi.
Yeah. Yeah. And the refis get tricky though. Most of these will end up having to be sold because if you have the appreciation, um, you know, because you're cashing out essentially to pay them off, then depending on what their FICO score is, and the cost of that, they might not be able to refi out of it and pay everything off.
Yeah.
That's the one downside to the large 20% down.
Yeah.
Whereas the regular CalHFA, when it's only 3% for the down payment or 3.5%, and then 3 or 4% for the closing costs, those are much easier to drop out of.
Yeah. Because I think the threshold was you had to pay it all back, right? If you wanted to refi, you had to pay all that down payment back.
That's it. There is no partial payments in this. So, and that's what would happen, right? So if you had appreciation, yeah, you'd be at that 80% threshold, but you'd have to have enough to be able to repay it because you're not going to be able to tap into 100% of that equity. And that's where the challenge lies.
Yeah. I
Because
just
if you
wanted
only had, if you had 20% increase, right, on the 500,000, for example,
yeah.
so you'd be up to 600,000. The only problem is you'd only be able to tap into 80% of it, and you're going to fall short then, coming up with enough money to pay the loan back in its entirety.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to get at was,
Yep.
there are
And that's where it forces the sell then at that point.
yeah.
Not because it's gonna walk on them and make them sell, but if they can't continue with that home for whatever reason, whatever life-changing event, then that's what forces the sell.
Better off to sell it. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Kevin had a question about when is the program active? My understanding is we can start this now if you've got buyers out looking.
Yeah, we're taking reservations now with the pre-approval. The funds won't come available till April, and so that's where right now it's just a matter of getting the reservations in, so that when the funds do come live, then they can identify a property or start identifying a property. If we located and identified a property now, the sellers would have to be willing to wait. So motivation changes things. Now, obviously, this far out, that motivation is a little bit harder stretch for the sellers. But as we get closer, that motivation comes more in line, and then we can start, closing some of these things.
Right. And getting them pre-approved now is key because you need to know where they fall in that threshold, 80 to 120. Where's that going to be?
Exactly. That's one of the first things we have to do is we have to calculate their income and figure out that they're going to fit that criteria. And it's that's where it's a combination. Now, your guys' area is pretty well served in the sense that, there's plenty of homes within the budget range of the income, compared to, say, San Jose, where
Yeah.
most people, unfortunately, they're going to make too much money for the program.
Yeah. But then we have hometown heroes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always something, right? So
Absolutely.
there
Yeah.
are a lot of ways for buyers to get funding right now. And it's just a matter of having a conversation and explaining to them that it's a good idea to go talk to a lender early so you know what your options are.
Well, and I think what this and Hometown Heroes does is, there's a lot of tire kickers right now because they're hearing buzz, the rates coming down, they're waiting for the rates to come down. And as you and everybody on this call knows, once those rates come down, the buyers that were already knee deep in it and already pre-approved or doing, looking at other things are going to be the ones that'll be the first to jump. And then the tire kickers are going to be the ones that'll be passed by on stuff like this because they're not going to be lined up. So it really is a great conversation piece to help create that sense of urgency for people to actually, act rather than just talk.
Well, I think too, it's a good idea to introduce this and say, hey, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but as your real estate professional, I wanted to advise you that this is coming down the pipeline and here's how we need to get you ready for it, right? Like
Yep.
this is a good time to have that conversation so they feel like you're actually doing something proactively for them to get them into a house. and it doesn't cost us anything to do it, right?
Right.
Fine.
Nope, not at all.
Cool.
It's
Okay.
essentially a pre-approval, very similar to a TBD underwrite approval. It's kind of running on the same premise. It's just going through the state with the registration after the fact. So everything's processed. Basically, it's a snapshot in time as of right now. Credits pulled. All the income's provided, verifications are done and completed through processing, and then that whole file is then sent to underwrite. And then once everything's underwritten and all the questions and all the pieces are filled, then it'll then go to the state for the reservation for them to back it.
Okay. Okay.
So a little bit longer time frame by comparison to a regular file, but that's because we are dealing with the state of California. And that's why they're doing it this way, because last year there was such a disaster with the lottery, and then one file taking longer than the other because maybe it had more complicated pieces, moving parts, more people, because sometimes you have 4 or 5 people living in a household. And so those people then suffered where they didn't maybe get the reservation because where somebody was just a single owner did, because it was a more simplistic file to review. But when you have as much that was coming in during that time period, and in the jam-packed version of what it was, it really wasn't well served. And so that's a large part of why they're switching it up this year.
Okay. If you guys would like to unmute and put your camera on, that would be great. Brad is here to answer any questions. I know there were some floating around in the chat, but this is your chance to get all.
Yeah, please. And even if it's a scenario or talking about another program, I mean, feel free. There's definitely a lot of stuff out there.
Yep.
I just have a question. So is it like is it like do they need to have any specific lender, or it can be any lender for this program?
Yeah, no, great question. So it does have to be specific lenders. We are able to tap into the program with our network, and so but not everybody can participate.
Okay.
But yeah, good question.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Do buyers have to be all in the same household currently, or can they say, hey, we're all going to move in together and we all want to buy?
Good question. Yeah, no, they can be separate, and as long as the affidavits and those statements are that they're going to occupy that property, no problem. And just to reiterate that, this is for owner occupancy. This isn't for investment or second home. So nobody's going to get the money, if they're not planning to live in it. And so with that one, obviously there comes questions, and sometimes we have to be able to validate those questions and answers, which essentially with a lot of people working remote, sometimes their corporate office is Texas, yet they're here in California working at their desk. So we do have to be able to make sure and validate those things, because they will be looking at that in the sense of who is going to be here occupying and living in the home.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have another question.
Of course.
Okay, what if I am going to buy a house and I haven't bought a house before, but my parents are going to help fund it, and my mom is going to move in with me? Does she have to be on there as a qualifying earner if they're like retired and they're getting Social Security or anything else? Like, does that count?
So she doesn't have to be on the loan, but she would contribute to the qualifying income.
Okay.
So essentially, then she might not be, because some people don't necessarily want them on the loan, especially when they're heavy needs and they're getting towards the final stages of life, and maybe there's not a trust set up, right? So sometimes that complicates title for a couple reasons. So then in that case, we wouldn't collect all their income and submit it for the underwrite, but we would have to collect it for the sake of annualizing it to determine that person contributing to that household would still meet under the median income for the household.
Okay.
And the max loan on this too, just so you guys know, is $150,000. So there is a cap on that. Now, obviously, you put that in perspective, I think it's $750, I think is the purchase price, but there is a cap to it, just so everybody knows.
Is that the cap for this specific area, Brad, or is that for the program?
For the program, for the 20% down. That's just what they set it because of the funding aspect of it.
Okay.
Let's see, 97. Yeah, 750 is the reverse calculation on that.
Cool. Okay. Anybody else have questions for Brad? No. Okay. Okay, so Brad has his contact information in the chat. If you put yours in there, that's super helpful as well.
Yeah, please do. And then I will confirm what the minimum time is, and then I'll respond back to your email once I get that answer. Oh, good question. No, it won't be able to be combined with Hometown Heroes, largely in part because you just have overlying factors.
Mhm.
So the Hometown Hero piece is one that is directly connected with us. And because this is not a regular loan that we have full control over, we can't contribute, and it falls against the regulations for lender contributions within the guidelines for the down payment assistance. So a lot of these down payment assistance don't want or allow certain lender contributions, and that's because of the contributions that are happening for the down payment assistance through the state and or county federal level. And so anything in addition like that has to be just on a regular conventional loan or a regular FHA loan, where they would then bring their own contribute or down payment to it. But good question.
Yeah, that was a good question. I was going to ask that sooner, and I kind of knew the answer because there's specific guidelines there about qualifying, which makes sense. You can't have any credits, but
Yep.
um,
And then I see another one here. Yeah, reservations are based on the approval. So they're not doing the lottery this year. It's basically just get them in and we'll get them qualified and get them reserved.
Yeah, so get into your database and ask them if they've already heard about the Dream for All program with a 20% down payment assistance. And I'm sure your phone is going to start ringing.
Of course. Of course. Yeah. And then, yeah, I'm working on getting some promotional flyers. This is all brand new. So we're working on getting some stuff going. And so the approvals, the pre-approvals and the reservations are live now as of this week. The actual funding won't happen until April. And so we don't know exact date, although I think they were talking the 12th, but they haven't officially announced it yet. And this is also, great topic for those, like I said, those buyers that are on the fence. It's a really good way to help get them off the fence and get them, motivated and active in starting to engage.
Yeah, even a short text message like, "Hey, are you still looking for a home this year?" Right? Like, I mean, yes or no. That's a very easy question. Or, "Hey, have you heard about our buyer rebate programs, our client rebate programs?" Anything like that that just says, "Hey, there's some benefit to having a conversation," is going to make it more likely that they'll respond. So that's my 2 cents. Just get out there and start talking to your database and let them know, "Hey, this is starting now this week." So we can get you.
Yeah. And, to that point too, I mean, sometimes we all struggle with, having content and being able to, call people and, this is a great way to just step into your sphere of influence and call, neighbors that you've been hesitant to call or friends or family. And, it's really because now you can actually, rally the troops and ask for help. And you can just word it as, hey, I need your help today. I've got access to this wonderful program, and it blew out of funds in a very short time period last year, but it's a great opportunity for people to get in. So who can you refer me to today, or who can you tell about now, so that we can get this going, so that they actually have an opportunity to gain access to it, because unfortunately what they don't know is going to hurt them at this point. And so it's up to you to get that word out and really push the envelope on how people are going to be hearing about this.
Yeah, because I don't think it's well publicized. I remember
Mm-mm.
just a little blurb about
Definitely
it a
not.
week or two ago, and I was like, "What now? They're doing it again?" there was like, a day it went through the news cycle and now it's gone again. And it's not going to come up again until the funds are gone. And they're like, hey, there was this program and the funds ran out in X number of days. That's going to be the next time it
And that's
jumps.
exactly what happened last year. It was just they didn't expect the activity that it got just based on the numbers of normal CalHFA. And, but it really was those that were connected are the ones that, were able to take advantage of it.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying just, show your value. Tell them what they can possibly take advantage of. Again, this is first time buyer program, but then the other one is the Hometown Heroes program. So
Yep.
really
And one last one just came through. So yeah, there is no set deadline, although because of the nature of this program, it will exhaust funds really, really quick. And once the funds are gone, there's no more funding. So then the program quits. Which if it follows true to last year, if the funds become available for funding in April, before April is over, the funds will be exhausted.
Yeah.
So, but CalHFA itself does run the program each and every year. Now they run a series of different programs, and they're, like the regular one is usually just minimum down 3.5%. You tag it with an FHA, and then they can get another 3%, 4% for closing costs. That's the normal CalHFA program. That'll run all year long. There's no deadline to it. And very rarely does that run out of fundings. It's usually not until the California budget goes into a major deficit, which it has announced, but they haven't cut these programs yet. That's usually the only time that things will exhaust under normal circumstances prior to the year end.
Right. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap for today? I think we got it. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording and I will get this out to everyone.